Follow Me Not by Reddit user Hopo Poppy. One late some night, I had just finished hanging around with my friends. We'd gone out for a few drinks. After, my friend dropped me off out in front of my gated apartment building. My boyfriend wasn't on the lead, so we shared my key fob to get into the building. So I would just call him and tell him to come down and let me in, and vice versa. Sometimes the doorman would let me in, but oftentimes they get up and attend to problems on one of the other floors, or do something in the office. I called my boyfriend when I was pulling in, so now I just have to wait patiently by the door. The apartment building is gated, and cars cannot get in without a remote. However, you can walk in on foot through a separate gate door. It was also connected to a plaza on the other side, where there was a market, a barber shop, and a liquor store. Since I live in a big city in a high-rise building, there's always people sitting outside the liquor store. You can bring some pretty interesting characters around, to be honest. However, this night, it happened to be a weekday, and it was pretty quiet. I was just looking down at my phone when I randomly took a glance around. I noticed a guy standing at the other end of the lot, looking at me. As soon as I looked at him, he looked away. I didn't think much of it, to be honest with you. I'm a decent looking girl, and it's common for guys to take a glance. I started wondering what's taking my boyfriend so long, and decided to call him. He answered and said he'd accidentally spilled drink on the carpet and was trying to clean it up before the stain set. I rolled my eyes and told him to hurry up and hung up on him. When I turned back around, I almost jumped out of my skin. That guy, who had been looking at me, he'd silently moved so close to me that he was within my reach. Clearly startled, I said something like, "You scared the shit out of me." The guy was pretty expressionless, but he responded,
"Do you live here?"
This guy was totally unassuming. White guy in a t-shirt and baseball cap. Something about the way he crept up on me and then asked me that had totally creeped me out. Without thinking, I nervously blurted out, "Yeah, you trying to get in to see someone?" Before he could answer, my neighbour had walked out the building and, upon recognising me, started a chit-chat. The conversation was brief, but the guy had backed away, clearly taking the hint that he wasn't going to be included in this conversation. My neighbour walked to his car and drove off. I didn't see the guy anywhere and completely wrote him off. So my boyfriend finally comes out and he says he wants to walk
Up the gas station, real quickly. Wanna come?
Sure, I had nothing better to do. It was just a walk past a couple of intersections and then onto the corner of the main road. The walk was pretty dark when it came to street lights, but I never felt unsafe as it was always pretty populated, and I especially felt fine with another person with me. Now, I did have a few drinks in me, so when we were walking up the street, I was lagging a little bit behind, probably swaying a little bit, and I was maybe like 10-15 feet behind my boyfriend. When he reached an intersection and he realised I was behind him, he turned around and said something like,
"Hey, you gonna catch up to me or not?"
and then immediately made a face. Then he said,
That was really shady.
"What was shady? What are you talking about?" When it was our turn to walk, he took my hand and led me across and said,
Some guy was walking behind you, but when I turned around and said something to you, he literally all of a sudden just turned around and started walking the opposite direction.
"What? What guy?" I turned my head around and just in time to see the unmistakable t-shirt and baseball cap. That same guy that had lurked around the door was crossing the street, going the opposite direction. I saw him glance over his shoulder directly at me, and the drinks acting for me, I raised my hands in the air and flipped him off. He turned around and then turned the corner and was gone. My boyfriend and I walked home, and I crawled into bed and went right into my drunken sleep. It wasn't until the next morning when my boyfriend mentioned it again did I actually realise how creepy that was. That guy now knows where I live. Of course, it's years later and I'm over it now, as my boyfriend lives with me. We have a dog and an apartment building that has cameras and 24-hour doormen. I don't feel unsafe, but I still find myself looking around for that guy. 22, and I make sure my boyfriend is already at the door waiting for me when I come home at night, even if I do have my own key fob now. Better safe than sorry. Creepy t-shirt, stalky man. Let's never meet again. Who's that sat on the side of my bed? A Reddit user, Finnished. Not me, but it happened to a friend of mine a year or so ago. He gets these pretty bad night terrors quite often and has horrible vivid dreams, so this kind of makes the whole happening even more freaky. One night he walks up into the bedroom and sees a silhouette of a person sitting at the edge of his bed. He He reaches for his girlfriend's side of the bed to see if she was still sleeping. To his growing sense of horror, he could feel her lead still and sound asleep on her side. Calm down, he thought. At this point, I'm sure it's just one of those nightmares. And he was so slightly relaxed, but still gnawing at him like a flea, he thought, safe not sorry, and decided to speak up and ask.
Is there someone there?
No answer. A sigh of relief as he reached over to show himself what an idiot he was being. His blood ran cold.
What the hell?
He shouted.
There was a person sitting at the end of my bed.
He freaked out and put the lights on. Sees an elderly, seemingly drunk, disorientated lady just sitting there on another bed. This is the best part of the next day to figure out, with the landlord of the apartment, how she got in. Turns out the lady possessed door keys not only to their apartment, but the floor below her own apartment as well. I almost had a panic attack when he told me this. Jeez, crazy old lady. Please don't ask for sugar. What's that banging? By Reddit user Faith3958. It was Friday night and I had just gotten home from work. I was around 16 years old when this had happened. And honestly, I was no stranger to the dangers of other people's actions. At that age, and especially around that time in my life, no matter what I encountered, I was too sure of myself. I thought nothing or no one could touch me, even after last year when I got chased. But that is a whole other story. Anyway, short backstory. I had this friend I will call Joe. Joe and me dated for a while, but we knew that it wasn't meant to be at that time. But we remained the closest of friends, and still to this day are. Joe lived a few blocks from me, even worked at the restaurant beside the restaurant I worked at, so we're always together. Like many nights after work, Joe needed a ride home. Well, instead of dropping him off at the road, I just dropped him outside of my house, and he decided he could walk home from there. That night, my parents went out to a family gathering party. My parents forgot to drop the house keys off to me earlier that day, so they left him in the mailbox. It wasn't unusual since my parents always forgot to either tell me they were going out or always forgetting to get me a spare key. So our mailbox honestly was never used for mail, but for putting my house keys in. After talking a few minutes to Joe, I decided to tell him goodnight and head inside to take advantage of the fact that my parents were gone. I knew some teens would have invited Joe inside if they were in my situation, but I was actually a really good kid, and my grandmother lived 2 houses down from me, so the risk of inviting Joe in was not worth my parents' wrath when they found out. I got up the porch and reached inside the mailbox, moving my hand around, trying to find the key. I always made sure to cut the porch light off when I did this, because I didn't really want everyone else seeing our hiding spot. Usually I would leave the key in the mailbox, but that night, I don't know why, but I took it inside. I sat down and grabbed me some food, watched a little TV, and decided to call a friend. His name was Smurf, and Smurf was a big guy. He also lived about 10 minutes away from me. As Smurf and I chatted about our night and work, I hear a weird sound. It was the sound of movement in the mailbox. I hit mute on the TV and told Smurf I was hearing something messing in my mailbox. He of course told me to go back and check, but the thing was, the door had no windows on or either side of it. At the time my dad was really into remodelling but had not found the time to put in the windows, so it was nothing but a wall and door. I go to my room, which was beside the hallway where our front door was, to look out of my bedroom window. I didn't want to cut the porch light on because A, I was scared, and B, in a way I felt like it was a bad idea to cut it on. I peeked outside the window and unfortunately it was way too dark outside to see anything. So I told Smurf I'd call him back. I called my grandmother and asked her to look outside to see if she had seen anyone on the front porch. She helped my cousin to look outside, and my cousin said she didn't see anybody. Honestly, I don't think she looked good enough. Well, before I jumped in the shower, I called Smurf back and tell him if I didn't call back in 15 minutes after a shower, I was dead. Of course, we both laughed the situation off, thinking it had to be my imagination. Before I jumped in the shower, I called Joe telling him what was going on, and he was really worried as usual. I told him not to worry, and I would call him back after the shower. He said,
If I don't hear from you, I am coming up.
I assured him again, you will hear from me, and everything will be okay. I grabbed my clothes and started up the shower water, waiting for it to get hot. I get inside the steaming shower, and we had amazing water pressure, I may add. I love and still love taking long showers. so that day wasn't any different. Suddenly I hear a banging sound. I thought maybe I was hearing things and proceeded showering. Then the noise was growing louder, so loud that there was no way I could ignore it. I hurry out of the shower and wrap my bathrobe around me. I open the bathroom door and cut off the fan to the bathroom. The sound was coming from the side of the door to the kitchen. Now on the side of my parents' house is a screen door, and a door that led to steps down to our basement. Or you can walk a few steps up to another door that leads you straight into our kitchen. Well, automatically this freaked me the fuck out. I called up my grandmother, who finally answered, and I tell her not to come outside, but call Dad. I even started calling my parents, but no answer. I don't know why I didn't call 911, but I just kept thinking I would be safer if someone like my dad was here. So I grabbed the knife and stood to the side of the door, just in case they made it up to the door leading to the kitchen. I prayed no one would come in, and prayed that it was nothing. Well, the banging stopped, and suddenly the banging started on the front door. I called my grandmother, who said the police were outside. I told her to make sure because I'm not opening the door for no one. But it was the police, thankfully. My grandmother and the neighbour beside had both called it in. When I answer, I'm standing there crying, holding onto a knife like it was my life support. The cop told me to put it down and so on. Well, I see Joe standing outside and I told the cop, I know him. Joe stayed with me until my parents got home and the cops parked outside the house for hours. Well, to make a long story short, the next morning my dad went to the side of the house and saw someone had busted the screen door and the door to the basement. The kitchen had been dented at the bottom, where I guess whoever it was kicking at the door. This really disturbed us, especially me. It made me feel very unsafe, and as I told my story to my parents again, we all knew it had to be someone who knew they were gone. Someone that knew that key was in that mailbox. But who? Well, word got around in the neighbourhood, and it was all the people were talking about. I mean, the cops even had to question some of the neighbours who came out to watch the whole shit hit the fan that night, but there wasn't any leads. A month later, my sister's boyfriend said something that sent chills down my spine. That 36-year-old neighbour, Richie, was obsessed with me. I said, what do you mean? Brad, my sister's boyfriend replied.
He wrote poems and stuff about you. I knew this because his little brother told me about it.
So I just knew then that it was him. I knew that it had to be Richie who tried breaking in. Well, I told my dad, and my dad is a thinking man. He will think and think about what you tell him, only making him madder each second it runs through his head. Well, a week later, we kept an eye out for Richie. I was outside playing basketball with Joe and a few other kids in the neighbourhood. Then Brad walks over, a letter that Richie had written to me. Wow, more of a poem. It never said anything about the attempt to break in, but it talked about how if I knew him, I would love him and not Joe. Joe was so angry. He began trying to fight Richie. Of course, Richie ran inside and would not come out. My dad even tried to get him out. We called the cops, and the cops really said there was nothing they could do. The poem proved nothing. Richie denied the poem, denied the allegations, even though Brad tried telling the cops the poem was from Richie. The worst part was that nothing ever got figured out. Nothing was ever proven, and to this day I still wonder if it was Richie. I believe it was him, but the scariest part is that if he did get in, how long had he been watching me? This story is one of 2 incidents that happened to me that will follow me forever, haunting me, causing me to trust not one single person. Last thing I heard about Richie was that he'd got arrested for drug charges, and that he was sleeping with his mother. Ugh, I will just say I am glad I never crossed his path again. Creepy invader Richie. Ugh, let's never meet again. Thank you to the story providers of this video, to you lot for listening, liking and subscribing. You're all awesome. /cheese toast. And always remember, if trouble comes your way, just try to make yourself look big. Hee hee.